In 1793, someone released a goat on a sacred Hawaiian island, and that single act set off a chain of events that would end 172 years later with the United States military detonating a simulated nuclear weapon on the same ground.
But this isn't a story purely about bombs and destruction. It's a story about breaking something sacred, almost past repair, and the people working to put it back together.
You still can't set foot there, but behind that closed door, the island is coming back to life, waiting in escrow for a nation that doesn't exist yet. The island is called Kahoʻolawe. It's a rust-red mass rising out of the Pacific, close enough to Maui that you can see it from the road on the island's south shore. No ferry goes there, no resort has ever opened on its beaches. It is about 45 square miles, smaller than San Francisco. And in that tiny footprint, researchers have documented nearly 3,000 archaeological and historical sites and features. Ancient temples, small shrines fishermen built at the water's edge, petroglyphs cut into rock faces that have been there for over 1,000 years. The second largest adze quarry in all of Hawaii is here, a place where Hawaiians harvested stone for tools across centuries.
The entire island sits on the National Register of Historic Places, every square mile of it.
Per square foot of ground, Kahoʻolawe carries more recorded sacred history than almost anywhere else in America. And the ground itself will kill you. Michael Nahoapi'i runs the Kahoʻolawe Island Reserve Commission, the government body charged with managing the island's recovery.
Part of his job involves walking a line.
On one side, the red dirt is clear. 3 feet further on, objects are pushing up through the soil. Thumb-sized 20-millimeter rounds, grenades, battleship shells up to 16 inches in diameter, some of them weighing as much as a small car. This is what Kahoʻolawe looks like right now, an island only partially cleaned up from its violent past. Here's the official version of events. Starting in 1993, Congress set aside $400 million for a 10-year cleanup of Kahoʻolawe. The cleanup ran from the mid-1990s through 2004, and in 2004, it was declared complete.
But here's what the cleanup actually did.
It only cleared 75% of the island's surface, leaving the rest untouched and likely hazardous. It also cleared only about 9% of the island to any meaningful depth, 4 feet down. The surrounding ocean has not been touched, and the iron ore running through the island's basaltic rock, the same ore that gives the dirt its famous Hawaiian red, defeats traditional metal detectors, forcing crews to switch to electromagnetic gear. The bombs that remain will keep working their way upward season by season through the soil. Even today, they're still coming up out of the ground.
So how does this island, just off the coast from some of the most pristine beaches in the world, still have so many bombs in its soil? And how did they get there in the first place?
Well, it's easy to name a scapegoat. The United States military bombed a sacred island for 50 years and then declared victory on a job they had barely started.
And that story is true, but it's not the whole one.
Because the Navy didn't arrive at Kahoʻolawe in 1941 and find something pristine. They found something that had already been stripped and starved and methodically dismantled by a century of other human hands. Ranchers, colonial administrators, a penal colony that operated right here on this sacred ground. Kahoʻolawe was broken in layers by different people across nearly 200 years, and the Navy was the last in a very long line. So let's go back to the beginning, because this island has nearly 1,000 years of history before anyone got to ruining it.
Around 400 AD, Hawaiians settled Kahoʻolawe and dedicated it to Kanaloa, the god of the ocean, deep water, and the current that runs beneath everything.
The island's western point, a place called Kealakekiki, translates directly as the path to Tahiti. Navigators training for open ocean crossings used that point as their departure bearing. They lined up the stars from that exact stretch of coast and sailed into 2,000 miles of open Pacific. Kahoʻolawe was an instrument, a working institution that kept Hawaiian civilization alive by teaching people to cross an ocean. The Protect Kahoʻolawe Ohana, the native Hawaiian organization that would later fight to reclaim this island, is particular about what the island represents.
Kahoʻolawe is the physical body of Kanaloa. The red rock, the soil, the shore, all of it is the body of a god. And that body started breaking down centuries ago.
Around 1830, under Kamehameha III, it was converted into a men's penal colony. The island had almost no reliable fresh water and barely enough food to sustain anyone. Prisoners reportedly swam the channel to Maui to find something to eat. The navigational center of a civilization had become a starvation cage.
And then came the leases. Starting in 1858, the Hawaiian government rented the island out for ranching.
Cattle first, then sheep, then goats, multiplying past any reasonable count. By the late 1890s, 900 cattle, 15,000 sheep, and the goat population eventually reached 50,000. That's nearly 66,000 animals crammed into 45 square miles. They ate the native vegetation to the root. They ate the roots. What was left, what the wind caught and carried toward Maui in visible red clouds, was dust.
The topsoil was gone, and the hardpan was exposed to the sky.
The U.S. Navy commandeered Kahoʻolawe on December 8, 1941, one day after Pearl Harbor. They seized a ruin. The island had already been eaten to death, but the Navy found even more ways to destroy it. Ship-to-shore bombardment started almost immediately after the eviction. Submarines ran torpedo tests in the surrounding waters, firing them at the shoreline cliffs. The Navy needed a live fire range close enough to Pearl Harbor to be logistically practical and remote enough that nobody lived nearby to object. Kahoʻolawe was both. Thousands of sailors and airmen trained there for Pacific campaigns that determined the course of the war, and the National World War II Museum is clear that this mattered. Real training on real targets, real lives saved downstream in the actual fighting.
The island's remoteness, which had made it a ruin, now made it irreplaceable.
Korea came and the range kept going. Vietnam came and the range got stranger. By the 1960s, Navy engineers were constructing mock Vietnamese SAM sites on the island's surface-to-air missile installations with radar arrays, and then bombing them. The Navy built a replica of the enemy's defensive infrastructure on a 1,000-year-old sacred island, destroyed it, rebuilt it, and destroyed it again.
The ordnance list across all three wars: high explosives, napalm, torpedoes, and missiles.
50 years of use, one of the most extensively bombed islands in the Pacific. The National World War II Museum actually calls it the most shot island in the world.
So, an island already scrubbed by 50,000 goats, now carrying half a century of ordnance in its basaltic rock. What could possibly be done to this sacred place after that?
Well, the nuclear age was underway, and Kahoʻolawe had a starring role there too. Enter Operation Sailor Hat. The stated purpose was to study what a nuclear blast does to a Navy ship, and Kahoʻolawe was the testing ground. But in a bit of remarkable restraint, the feds decided to not actually nuke Hawaii, but still, they wanted to simulate one. So in 1965, the Navy assembled a structure on the island's southwest shore, dome-shaped, 30 feet wide, 17 feet tall, stacked from more than 30,000 individual blocks of TNT. They anchored ships offshore, spaced every 100 yards, and detonated the charge, designed to simulate a 1-kiloton nuclear weapon at range. The blast generated wind speeds of 294 miles per hour. 2 observation blimps positioned high above the test zone were obliterated by the shockwave in midair.
Then they built another dome and another. 3 shots, codenamed Bravo, Charlie, and Delta, on the same shore, spanning February to June of 1965.
The crater filled with water, it is now the largest landlocked ocean-fed pond in Hawaii. Inside it live endemic Hawaiian shrimp, the tiny red opaiula, born into a habitat that did not exist before a fake nuclear bomb punched it into the rock.
An accidental ecosystem inside a deliberate wound.
1 goat, then a penal colony, then 50,000 animals, then half a century of ordnance, and then this.
And at this point, the natives had decided it was enough, and they were going to go further than anyone expected to save their sacred island.
January 4th, 1976, 9 native Hawaiian activists slipped past a U.S. Coast Guard blockade in small boats and stepped onto the island, still a live bombing range.
All we had was TVs to protect us.
They called themselves the Kahoʻolawe 9, among them a 25-year-old falsetto singer named George Helm. Helm wasn't a lawyer or a politician, but he was one of the most gifted vocalists in Hawaii, a voice people described as almost inhuman. And he had been using it deliberately to pull the islands into the story of Kahoʻolawe. He sang about the island, he talked about it between songs, and he built a public movement the way musicians build one room at a time, one listener converted at a time.
And then he actually paddled there. The group who landed that day founded the Protect Kahoʻolawe Ohana, and they occupied the island.
The Navy kept bombing, but the movement kept growing. On March 7, 1977, Helm, now 26, and a 25-year-old group member named Kimo Mitchell paddled from Kahoʻolawe toward Maui on surfboards. The Pacific took them both, and their bodies were never found. But their loss wasn't in vain, and the preservation movement entered the public consciousness.
Just 4 years after that, in 1981, the US added the entire island to the National Register of Historic Places. Military aircraft still kept bombing it. But the movement's momentum was finally there, and on October 22, 1990,
President George H.W. Bush ordered a permanent end to the military bombing on Kahoʻolawe, with Hawaii's Senate delegation getting it through Congress. In 1994, the Navy transferred land title to the state of Hawaii to be held in trust for a sovereign Hawaiian entity not yet born. Congress put $400 million behind the cleanup. The bomb stopped, the money arrived, but now someone had to figure out what that money could actually do to all those bombs buried beneath the 45 square miles.
And that's the part of the story I keep coming back to. Kahoʻolawe wasn't saved by one person fixing everything alone. It was saved because a community refused to look away, kept showing up, and turned concern into actual protection.
And that same idea is why I partnered with Planet Wild and why I became a member myself. Planet Wild is community-based nature protection, basically crowdfunding for nature. Every month, more than 25,000 members, including myself, fund one mission: rebuilding a forest, saving an endangered species, restoring soil everyone wrote off as dead, and protecting our oceans. And the best part, they film every mission, so in under 30 days, we can watch exactly what our contributions did right here on YouTube.
One of those missions took ground stripped down to bare hardpan, not unlike what 50,000 goats did to this island,
and brought it back to life using an ancient technique that involves underground forests. For me, it's simple. It's easy to feel helpless watching what gets done to places like Kahoʻolawe.
But this island's whole comeback started because a handful of people refused to wait for permission, and Planet Wild runs on that same idea.
People acting together and never left guessing where the money goes. If that's you, consider joining. Give whatever feels right, every dollar counts. The first 100 people to use my code PARK7 get their first month on me.
Scan the code on the screen or tap the link below. No catch, cancel anytime. And if you want to see them in action first, check out their underground forest mission linked below. Okay, now back to one more problem the island is struggling to deal with today: cats.
Today, an estimated 500 to 600 feral cats, descendants from the ranches of the 19th century, are eating native seabird eggs and chicks across the island. Removing them requires traps set in the interior, and the interior still has bombs. You can't enter it safely. The Kahoʻolawe Island Reserve Commission tested an AI-powered drone and camera system, a tool called Sentinel, to locate the cats. The program was paused for lack of funding. About 30% of the island remains completely barren from severe erosion, with roughly 1.9 million tons of soil washing into the sea every year.
And the responsibility for who takes it from here sits in limbo. The island's in a legal trust to be handed over to a nation for native Hawaiians, but there's no effort in Washington underway to create that. Until then, it can only be used for native Hawaiian cultural, spiritual, and subsistence purposes.
But while everything else is in waiting, the native Hawaiian people are taking what actions they can. The Protect Kahoʻolawe Ohana, the same organization founded by the 9 who landed in 1976, still run access trips, roughly once a month from March through October. Volunteers chant a request to come ashore at the north end, swim their gear in through the surf, and live for days with no electricity and no plumbing. Their day governed by the sound of the pu, the conch shell. Over 50 years, the Ohana has brought more than 50,000 people to the island this way. And while they're there, they work to restore the native plants too.
That work is slow and physical and faintly miraculous given what they're working with. Because most of the cleanup was surface only, and because digging risks setting off a bomb, crews can't plant the way you'd plant anywhere else.
So they plant on top of the ground. Rock mounds, rock rows, burlap burritos laid across the hardpan to catch windblown soil and seed, like mini garden beds built directly onto a battlefield. Seedlings are raised in Maui nurseries first and then carried over. And the numbers show a success story in the making. Native plant survival has climbed from around 5% to roughly 80%, and staff and volunteers have put hundreds of thousands of native plants into the ground, about 417,000 over 15 years by one estimate. A 500,000-gallon rainwater catchment feeds the irrigation, and some 30 native species now grow where there was once bare red rock. In October 2024, the first confirmed green sea turtle nest ever recorded on the island hatched. 87 honu, about 95% of the clutch, made it to the water. A restoration staffer called it the rebirth of the island. Volunteers have hand-cleared some 17 miles of trail that will eventually ring the entire island, linking dozens of historical shrines back together.
They hope to finish it within a few years.
This is an island that holds its dead and its living things and its unexploded ordnance in the same red soil.
And the legal limbo it sits in right now is inseparable from a larger unresolved question about Hawaiian sovereignty itself.
Kahoʻolawe may be the body of a god, scarred by centuries of misuse, but through their painstaking work, Native Hawaiians aren't waiting on anyone's permission to bring it back to life.
And finally, don't forget to check out Planet Wild and all that they're doing to protect animals and ecosystems around the world. The first 100 people to sign up using our code PARK7 get their first month on us. Just scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description. Thanks for watching.